Don't let a DUI charge ruin your life. Get a professional and confidential evaluation from our experienced team at True Heights Treatment. Our evaluations are accepted by the majority of courts in the state of Illinois and provide a comprehensive assessment of your substance use patterns and potential treatment needs. Get the help you need today and start your path to a brighter future. Contact us now to schedule your evaluation at 708-248-7039 or at thtdui.com.
The George Brassey podcast is made possible with funding provided from Brassey Global Strategies, LLC, a leading political consulting, public policy, government affairs, and research firm. Are you interested in running for elected office? Need advice? Call or email George, 708-769-5015. Brassey Global Strategies 1 at gmail.com.
Hey everyone, it's George. I am so glad to welcome Joshua Travis back to the podcast. Josh was my second guest way back when in December of 2020. Josh, welcome back.
Thank you so much. It's good to be back. Thank you for having me.
Josh, tell the listeners a little bit about your journey in the last 2 years. When we talked 2 years ago, you were running for trustee the first time. That didn't work out for you. So pick up the story from there.
Yeah, I'm going to lead it with a positive. I'll say, of course, it didn't work out for me, but I think I learned a lot in that not only in that election, but then in the 2 years since then. I came out, I'll just be flat out honest with you. I came out very last, and it was a wake-up call that, when you want to be a politician, you want to be someone who says they're the voice of the leaders, you've got to really be more in tune and talk to the people. So that's one of the biggest things that I've learned in those 2 years. And I went out immediately, started seeing some of those residents who said they had some issues, either pipe or trees or ice or something. And I continued to work with them. I said, what were the issues that you faced? How can I make sure that the village is trying to help and support? And that's ultimately why I love Park Forest, is because, and that's the village, that's where the election I ran in, Park Forest, Illinois. You don't have to be a politician. You don't have to be a person of power in order to make a difference, especially in one of your neighbors or one of your residents' lives. So, this 2 years have taught me just keep going at it. And of course, now, April 4th this year, I'm running again. I'm going to try and get that seat because I do believe that I have a vision for Park Forest that's unique, that should be heard, and at least give the voters a chance.
Before we get into that vision, Josh, did you have some moments of doubt?
Always, consistently. And it's not, I think there are a lot of people who say you got to go in knowing this full-fledged, and you have to breathe it, want it. And that's true. A doubt is natural. And I think doubt is where you ultimately find courage. If you don't have doubt, if you're not scared to go forward, and I was scared before, I was absolutely scared to do this again. But at the end of the day, that is what courage is. That is what bravery is. It's looking at that doubt and saying, there are a lot of reasons why I can't do this, but am I ultimately the right pick? Yes. And in democracy, it never really is a bad decision to put your name forward at the end of the day, because that's what democracy is about. Looking at different candidates, looking at their vision. And again, while these are my opponents, if you will, I'll be honest with you, Park Forest always brings out really strong candidates, and any one of us would be a really good trustee.
Talk about the strengths you'll bring to the job if the voters give you this privilege.
Coalition building has been my rule of thumb in my career. In the last 2 years, I went from being executive director for a nonprofit. And anyone who's an executive director knows it's all about coalition building, but it's also about having to navigate a lot of headaches. One of the things I like most about what I'm doing now, I'm a regional manager for a dementia Alzheimer's group. I just really love getting back to the idea of coalition building not only outside of Illinois, but even outside of our nation, outside of our country. How are we looking at examples from foreign areas of ways that we can implement and we can change? I think that as different perspectives are brought to the table, that only enriches the conversation. So for me, I think that my history of working in Illinois politics and Chicago politics and South End politics makes me a good candidate for it, but I've not been a decision maker. I've not been one of those people who've been in the Southland area really rubbing at shoulders with all the people who will make all those decisions. I think one of the things we've got to do is bring in those outside voices who want to be a change and a difference. And that is what I do. That is who I am.
Josh, how will you be able to work with the board given some of the divisions that exist now?
And I think that's a great question, because when you look at the board and you look at the history of the board, I think the word division is interesting to put it, as a way of communication. This board is very much consent agenda. It's, there's not a lot of discussion happening back and forth. And to be fair and honest, I think if you were to put me on the board, just the people of Park Forest, I would bring in conversations. I would bring in and start conversations that need to be had. How are we using the current funds that we bring in from our tax dollars, knowing that we are not the highest taxing entity that people see on their tax bill, but that still means we bring in tax money. So how are we making sure that tax money we're bringing in is funding projects that people in Park Forest want, and that people in Park Forest know keep them here as residents? That's the core root of any discussion or conversation that has to be had. But the problem right now is that there are no conversations being had. It is whatever is brought before the table is voted on and brought forward. I'd like to see conversations being had.
Josh, speak a little bit about your thoughts on the form of government in Park Forest with the village manager.
And it's interesting. I think some of my people who've seen my campaign or seen the way that I work think, oh, well, he wants to, go into the staff and tell the staff what to do. And that is absolutely not true. I'm a huge supporter in our form of government. We have our council manager, and I think that having expert staff is a great way of making sure that we don't have political corruption going rampant within our community. I think when you have a really large population, there are places where that makes sense, Chicago, and you can have your own, issues with, how that works. But I think in our village, the way that we operate with the integrity that we have within our staff, we do a good job. Now, that being said, the point of a village trustee is not, again, to just take information from the staff and say, okay, yes, I'll vote on that. Sure, positive. It's also, well, let's talk a little bit about the decision-making process that went into this. What are the benefits that are happening here? And I just want to be very clear. I think our village staff continuously present highly professional, incredible bits of recommendation for the village board. The problem is our village board don't necessarily take that information, analyze it, and then regurgitate back information to them in order for them to kind of, in order for our staff to kind of tell us, why exactly are we doing this as opposed to something else? That's the kind of conversation I'd like to see happening. And again, I just don't see it happening at the village level.
Josh, talk a little bit about where you think the nonpartisan tradition in Park Forest goes from here in 2023.
Nonpartisan, so I want to just be very clear. The idea of nonpartisan is different in Park Forest than it is in probably other places.
Very
a nonpartisan election is very typical. A lot of communities do nonpartisan elections where you don't have, quote unquote, a primary beforehand, Democrats, Republican, or an established party. So that's typical, and that's not untypical for other elections within the area. Where we're different is we have a nonpartisan committee where the candidates are, you can say, compelled to sign an agreement saying we won't do slates, we won't work together, we obviously won't work with national political parties such as Democrats or Republicans. But as I said before, and probably the most crucial part of that is we won't slate. So we won't work together. One trustee will not support another trustee. One trustee won't support a mayor. And that kind of public coalition building is frowned upon and not allowed in layman's terms. Now, I agree with the idea and the idea behind this, I just want to make it clear, it's a very noble concept. And I think it's a smart concept. It's very expensive to do an election. It's always been very expensive to do an election. And especially when you are going against war chests of national political parties, it becomes a situation where the people don't have the voice, the parties have the voice. And I definitely don't want to see that in Park Forest. And I don't want to see national politics in Park Forest. I do think that the nonpartisan committee out here and our nonpartisan agreements out here can be modified to allow park forest groups to build coalitions, because that is the root of democracy, coalition building with your neighbors. And if we have rules in place that stop that from happening, what happens are young voices that not everyone might agree with, but there's definitely a rumbling and actually, let me rephrase that. I think a good majority of people will agree with, but not everyone's involved in the process. Those voices, they don't get to flourish or blossom because they get stifled, they get stomped out by the more established voices who have money behind them. And then what just makes it a little bit more complex and frustrating is that if you look at the money and where it's coming from, you realize that it's still coming from political parties. And that, at the end of the day, is where you sit there and go, okay, well, so I'm trying to figure out where is the actual benefit here if an establishment group can continue to basically fund through political parties, but those who are the grassroots ground people try to make inroads and they can't. Are we actually doing the core root of what the nonpartisan was meant to be, making it accessible to everyone, or are we being part of the idea of stifling democratic voice? So I think that the future, like any democracy, it's not something that's guaranteed. It needs to be worked at and it needs to be worked on. And I think that if we just keep relying on this concept of, well, it's our history, it's how we have to have it as tradition, it's not going to lead us very well. And it's going to lead us to continue to be a stagnant group in the Southland.
With that said, does Josh Travis have an endorsement for mayor of Park Forest?
No, I don't. I do, and as I continue to say, I am a rule follower. I will not endorse anyone outside. I will not endorse anyone in the Park Forest election because I have agreed to nonpartisan rules. The only thing I will say is I support, and I just want to, I'll explain something in a second, but I support innovation. I support a drive to see something more, and I support someone wanting to do things for their community. It doesn't matter whether you're running for mayor, for trustee, for school board. The biggest difference that I think I have than other people going into this role is that I see it as a true job, not just a title to be bestowed upon someone, but as a true job that you have to work at and work on in order to make sure you're building a more equitable community for everyone. And that being said, I will just make the note that we only have one candidate for Park Forest mayor currently at this time, and that will be Joe Woods. And I have worked with Joe Woods for years, and I think that he will do a fantastic job as mayor, and if elected, I would really appreciate working with him as a trustee.
Josh, one thing that you're very passionate about is education in the community. Can you talk a little bit about the closure of Rich East and what that did to you personally?
Yeah, we have a debate coming up actually later on today. And one of the bits I always want to make sure I'm focusing on in the debates, but when I'm talking to people, are how when I was young, I used to utilize the resources, not just in Ritchie's, but in Rich Township and right here in Park Forest. From being able to learn biology in our wetlands to being able to learn theater in our theater centers. Park Forest is an abundant place where you have opportunity, but when we have the risk of losing a high school, losing a elementary school, losing any type of educational institution, it's not necessarily the job of the trustees to say, well, where'd that money go? What's going on there? Because that's the school board. What is the job of the trustee is making sure that those educational opportunities remain within the community. I'd like to see us continue to work with our partners, our grant partners. We are a municipal leader on grant funding. I think that gives us really strong backing and standing to go for even more unrestricted funds that we can apply to different areas within the village. But more than that, we can look into organizations that are targeted and build things like our wetlands, be able to do things like build our trade and our youth engagement in trade and carpenter skills by looking at the buildings that need to be renovated and updated. Those are ways that we can provide educational opportunities in the village, despite the threat of education investment being lost from our school boards. Now that's not the end of it, though. I think that one of the things that we do is if we also build a really strong opportunity and talk to other communities and build partnerships with them, like Chicago Heights, University Park, Richmond Park, we also build our coalition power. And so when it comes time for us to talk to the school boards, we come to them with a powerful foot within a voter block. And I think that's something that Park Forest kind of lets go to the waysides, partially because of the nonpartisan rules, if I'm being honest, because we try to stay out of the, being in that sphere so much. And so, of course, that means we will, if it doesn't matter during elections, we don't want their support, then sometimes we'll get pushed to the side. I think the way to counteract that is to work with our counterparts. So trustees working with aldermen, trustees from Park Forest, working with trustees from Richmond Park, working together to build that coalition to say, hey, we need to have an equitable educational system. And if you guys are not going to fund building there, let's make sure we're funding the programs that they're developing and that they're presenting to us.
Josh, what are some challenges you think Park Forest will face in the next few years?
A lot of people, we had a lot of people come in, buy homes. I think we're not going to be immune to what we're seeing. A lot of people trying to sell their homes, and housing prices starting to go very, 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 very down. So I think we're going to start to see a little bit more of a frustrated base here in Park Forest, and a group that's going to want to get rid of their homes and continue to see high tax bills come to their door. Again, I think, and one thing we talk about taxes, Park Forest, we really want to have more businesses out here, a grocery store that's always continuously brought up. But there's just this reality that we're probably not going to be an economic business boom here in Park Forest. I don't see that happening in the next 5 or 10 years. What I do see happening, though, is us retaining the residents who we've got by giving them a quality of life that they cannot deny. One of the main things I hear when I talk to people going door to door is, I like my community because it's quiet. I like that I can reach out to Village Hall and work with them and have something taken care of. I see that. I was able to get that done with my neighbors, and the neighbors see that. Those are important things that we want to make sure we keep, but I do think they'll be tested as we look at a now more turbulent housing market and just a more turbulent economy as we move forward. And that's national and, of course, state. But I think that we have leadership in place both at the state and now at our local level that can make a real difference.
Josh, how do you plan on staying connected with constituents if you are elected?
So one of the things I like to do is continue to go door to door. I've always kind of been a door to door survey kind of person. It's in my DNA to, when Richie's when I learned that Richie's was going to close, I almost didn't hesitate and put together a petition on not trying to save the school. Because again, my mindset is, let's not keep repeating the same things over and over. My petition was, how can we build a coalition and a task force between the three most important municipal bodies, and how can they bring together suggestions and information along in partnership with the school and students and the local government to the school board on what to do. That's how we build a collective voice, and that's how we build a collective power. So I don't see that I would be successful in this role if I were to abandon that going door to door, listening to people, having regular monthly conversations, and going to regular events hosted by the community. One thing I do want to mention, though, is that I think it's important that we reform our commissions. Like many local governments in the Southland, we have commissions and boards that are focused on really directly connecting to residents and resident areas. I think that we could districtify our commissions and have them in particular areas and represent from particular areas. And I think they can be a lot more self-sustaining and self-functional, where they bring in their own membership and they can host their own. Host their own. I'd call them elections, but right now they're appointed. So I think that through reforming the way that our government currently works and making sure that it's more reflective of the people and more accessible to the people, that's a great way that we can make sure information is being directly provided to a trustee in an official capacity. But for myself in this role, I'd like to I'll continue to go door to door, continue to just be in the community as much as I can. And not just for the sake of it, it's because we have so many challenges we continue to face. So you'll see me at your door asking for your help, not just asking for your vote or asking for you to talk to me, because while that is important, it's asking for you to please be part of this work that we have to do as a community. And the reality is, not everyone's busy. Everyone has things they have to do. So there has to be someone there leading that charge. And it's always been me, and I'm going to continue to do it.
Josh, what are 2 books that you'd recommend to the audience that have been important to you as a person?
Well, one book I'll recommend is more of an academic book. It's called Strength-Based Leadership. And I'm sure anyone who's had a master's class or master course will understand, in leadership or in business, will understand why this is an important book. It's based off of the research of Don Clefton, and it was compiled by Tom Rath, I believe. It's how do I explain this book? It's a book that talks about leaders. Now there's a research survey that you do beforehand that tells you about your leadership type, and then you read this book and it explains how leaders interact with each other and how they can work well together. And then it looks at those different leaders throughout history and how they've been successful by using data, using their interpersonal skills, but then also using their professional politics skills. It's a good book to kind of train to be a good leader if you're looking to do it. And I've used it and referred to it over the last 5 years that since I've had my master's degree.
Do you have one more?
Oh, right. The other book. So this actually is a book that, and I have it right here. This is a book that I got from Park Forest Public Library. And I got, when you sign up to either renew your library card or get a new library card, they tend to have a lot of programs. And that's one thing I love about our library, is that they have programs to encourage people to come in and utilize their services and remind them that you can get free books. I know we live in 2023, but if you were just go back to like the 1400s, free books would be so cool back then. So you just don't understand how incredible that is. But the book is by Nicholas Sparks. It's called Dreamland, and it's a fantastic book. I haven't read all of it. I'm about halfway through it right now, but it's basically a love story, and it talks about trying to set a new future for yourself, but trying to understand if you can let go of the past, and that resonates with me. That's something that I can understand. I think that a lot of people in Park Forest can understand.
Josh, Travis, tell the audience where they can find you on the internet if they're interested in your candidacy.
Yes, absolutely. So joshuatravis.com, that'd be the best place you can find all my information, and you can contact me directly. You can also find me on Facebook. What's my Facebook? JTravisPF for Park Forest. And that's basically all social media. But again, just joshuatravis.com. Send me a message. I'd love to hear from you. I love to hear from people. Just tell me a little bit more about yourself and see how I can also help you.
Josh Travis, thanks for coming on the podcast.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.
Help George stay on the Chicago Heights City Council. Go and donate today at tinyurl.com/AldermanGeorge 2023.
Begin to transform your life and work towards inner peace with expert psychotherapy. At True Heights Treatment, our experienced therapists provide personalized, compassionate care to help you overcome life's challenges and reach your goals. Whether you're struggling with depression, anxiety, relationship issues, or other mental health concerns, our team is here to support you. With a warm and welcoming in-person and virtual office atmosphere and a commitment to person-centered and evidence-based treatments, we are dedicated to helping you address your life's challenges. Contact us now to schedule your first session at 708-248-7039 or online at trueheightstx.com. Book your appointment today and start your journey towards a happier, healthier life.
Need more George? Like his pages on Facebook. Friends of George Brassey PAC, Fifth Ward Business Alliance, Chicago Heights Bicycle and Pedestrian Resource Center, and the George Brassey Podcast.